Hey everybody, and welcome to another edition of Cranky Gun Reviews. I am back with my Colt Government 380 Series 80 pistol. Now, I did a video on this just a few days ago when I took it out to the range and I shot it, and I was having some issues with rounds not feeding all the way into the chamber. So let's check to make sure this is clear. Nothing in the chamber, no magazine. And what I think there's two things that were happening. First off, because this is about a 1991 year of manufacture gun, I can tell when I take it apart and look inside that it's had some fairly decent wear. And I might as well go ahead and take it apart for you here. Very simple to do on this. Similar to a 1911. I probably take it apart a little bit differently than some people do. It's still a little bit dirty since I shot it, but it's not bad because I only put about 50 rounds through it. But that's the lower half of the gun, the frame, and then this is the upper half. So very easy to take it apart, actually. It's easier than a 1911, I think. You know, it has the same barrel nut and everything on here, so you can wind this guy out, take the plug out. Whoops. You can take it apart just like a 1911 if you have the spring in there. Do that. So there's the plug coming out. Take the barrel bushing out this way. And then this one, instead of the barrel sliding out the front, it kind of tips up and pulls out the back like most other semi-automatic firearms. Now, I don't really think there's anything wrong with the slide or the barrel or anything like that on this. These, they actually, every one of these that I've seen, the feed ramp on these is actually very well polished. I believe the factory polishes these. It's possible that when the round is loading in the chamber and it rides up the feed ramp that the casing, so the bullet is always a little bit tiny, smaller than the casing. It's possible that the casing is getting stuck on the end of the barrel, but the force of the spring should be able to overcome that. Now, what I've noticed a couple things, I looked up the parts diagram for this on Numrich Parts, and I think there's supposed to be a little tiny, like a machine washer shim on this rubber plug. This is basically just a flexible plug that holds the spring on there. I think there's supposed to be a little tiny shim on here, so it's possible that missing that shim, it could be giving me a little bit less force than I need on the spring. Probably not the issue. Probably more the issue is the fact that this spring is probably a little bit weak. And I tried looking on eBay, I tried looking at Numrich Parts and a few other places to try to find a spring, and I didn't find one. And then just by happenstance today, I punched in Colt Government 380 spring, and Wolff springs pops up on the computer, which I should have known because Wolff is very well known for making good quality springs. So I did two things. They offer two different recoil springs for this particular pistol. They offer a 12-pound spring and a 13-pound spring. So I bought both of those. They were about $7.15 each, so really cheap to try. Even if they don't work, I only waste about 15 bucks. So I bought both of those springs. And the other thing they have are some new springs for the magazines. And I think they're 5 pounds extra heavy over what the factory springs are. And most of these magazines are factory. I have one that's not factory. It's probably a Metal Form or some other brand. But 4 out of the 5 magazines I have are all factory. 2 of them are nickel and 3 of them are black. So these 2 are Colt magazines. They should work perfectly fine. Now, I originally thought you couldn't take these magazines apart, that it was, I mean, obviously you can take them apart somehow, but I thought because the base plate didn't slide off, they were pretty difficult to get apart. Well, I found a guy on YouTube that says basically you take all your rounds out, obviously, you depress the follower, you can put a pin through one of the holes on here to hold compression on the spring, and then you turn the magazine upside down and you can either shake the follower out, or I had to tap it on my desk to get them to fall out. Then the followers come out and you can just pull the springs out. Well, when I did that, 4 out of the 5 magazines, the springs look perfectly fine. Although 2 of them, the top piece that's bent back around was a little bit tweaked sideways, and one of them was broken. So I'm going to drop those pictures in right here. So what I basically did was the one spring that was broken, I bent an extra loop on the top of it and I stretched all of the springs. Now, the magazine that's not a Colt magazine, and I think one of the black Colt magazines, this is a Colt one, one of these Colt black magazines and the one that's not a Colt magazine, the springs that are in them looked way smaller than the ones that were in the nickel magazines. So I stretched the springs and all of them out a little bit, probably about an inch. I made them a little bit longer to add some more tension on them for now. But I did order 3 replacement springs. And I noted which magazine. It was actually this one here, the one that says PM on the butt of it. This is the one that had the broken spring in it. So I stretched it out and I rebent a loop on the end of it so it'll catch the inside of the follower and tilt the nose of the rounds up. I think it's a combination between the recoil spring being worn out and the springs in the magazines being a little bit too weak because this is an older pistol. I think that's why I was having issues with it. So ordered the Wolff springs. The 3 magazine springs was $17, and then like I said, it was about another $15 for the 2 recoil springs to try this out. So for a relatively low amount of money, I'm going to have all new springs in this thing. Everything else on the gun works fine. The safety lever works very well. It's actually an extremely positive click. And for anybody that's never worked on one of these, if you take this grip panel off and you fold that thumb safety down, there's a plunger with a spring right there that'll come shooting out if you're not careful. So make sure if you take the grips off of this thing, don't twist your thumb safety all the way down unless you really want to take it apart. Make sure you're paying attention so that plunger doesn't come flying out. But so reassembly of this firearm is very similar to a 1911. I've got my barrel bushing up here, and I tend to do this a little bit differently. I'll put the plunger in first, swing my barrel bushing back in place, then put my recoil spring in from the backside with the plunger, mainly because it's just easier that way. So once that's in place, now there's one thing you got to watch out for on the top of the frame. This is your ejector right here, this little tab. Only push it down until it's right at the top of the frame, like that. If you push it down all the way, it'll actually click down and it'll come off of its seating position in the sear spring. And you'll have to take this grip panel off and push in on the sear spring and then pull up on that. I made that mistake the first time I took it apart. I was sweating because I thought I broke this. But if you put it together correctly, just like a 1911, your takedown lever, drop it in when it's in the barrel here, slide your frame back until it lines up with that notch, drop it in, function check. And you're good to go. So not difficult to take down and clean and put back together. And hopefully I'll have those springs in the next week or so. When I get them in, you'll see me put them in the gun. You'll see me take it back out to the range and shoot it. But that's just a little bit of an update on my Colt Government 380, which is a 1911 style 380 pocket pistol. I really love this thing, and I hope I can get it to run as well as some of my other guns, because I would really enjoy carrying this for self-defense. It's like a really good size. It's quite a bit lighter than the Beretta 85. It's smaller than the Beretta 85, both thickness and in barrel length, but it's still a 380 ACP. And I have tested it out with a bunch of self-defense ammo, and it likes self-defense ammo. So I just want to try to get it to run on regular ball ammo and flat nose so I can make it a reliable handgun. But thank you for watching another edition of Cranky Gun Reviews. I'll be back at you soon with upgrades on this gun and hopefully some more range time very soon. As I said in my last couple videos, when somebody asks you to give up some of your freedom for the greater good, you remind them that freedom is the greater good. God bless America. Make sure you support your 2A rights. Have a great day and get out and shoot.